It's a Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Damichael Cole is back with me. It's his chance to wax nostalgic about his favorite NBA player no longer being on the Memphis Grizzlies. From there, Memphis has to find another guy to make it a full 14-member roster. So when are they going to do that? How can they do that? And then I'm going to get mad at the end of the episode because people are getting mad about things that they clearly don't understand regarding Tony Allen and his jersey retirement coming up in March. It's a Wednesday episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes. It's going to be a very emotional episode of Locked On Grizzlies. I haven't told Damichael this yet, but I did buy the rights for about a 30-second snippet to a little Boys to Men. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday that we played in the background for Damichael as he talks about his boy Derrick Rose. I'm going to move on. I'm not going to be that upset.
You can't help yourself, Joe. You can't help yourself. You can't.
But I don't want people to tune out. Like they're going to be like, Joe's just going to be a toolbox the entire show. We're not going to listen to this. I'm going to tone it down. I promise. Thank you guys so much for being with us on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. It is much appreciated. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mullinax. It's always great when I get to say one of your hosts because that means Damichael Cole is with me, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. I like to think I'm pretty good at hosting solo. I know Damichael is good at hosting solo. The best version of Locked On Grizzlies is when we're together, and it makes it even better when you guys are here with us. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, we're free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, literally anywhere you can get a podcast, you can find Locked On Grizzlies. Hang out with us. We've had a couple of great days on YouTube. Again, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Don't miss out on any episode on the audio side as well as the visual side. I promised I wouldn't be a toolbox, but I've got one more for you.
Come on, Joe. I know you can help yourself. Just keep it coming. Keep it coming.
I have to be honest. When you replied on X to me when I declared victory over you, and that I was, I won the trial before it even began of Derrick Rose. You replied, "We shall see," with a little winky face or a little emoji, something like that.
I said, "Not so fast."
Not so fast. And you went like mini viral over that, which I got a kick out of.
Quick, man.
And I never have felt more important than when I see all these people. What's Damichael saying? What's he doing? Like they're coming to my Twitter thread or my X thread, and I'm like, hey, look at me. It's like I'm writing blog posts that are controversial all over again. It was nice to get that attention and be in your spotlight a little bit there, partner. But you obviously were a part, Drew Hill of the Daily Memphian and others, of course, have been a part of this story about Derrick Rose. I broke down from lots of different, smart aleck angles, the Derrick Rose being washed aspect and this potentially being a good thing for the Grizzlies. But I did make sure to point out two things that when I talked to you yesterday that were important, or a couple days ago before I recorded that show. Number one, the Grizzlies wanted Derrick Rose on the roster. Like, me declaring victory does not mean that the Grizzlies were, agreeing with me. Like, this was not their idea. It was Derrick Rose's idea, and it was a buyout. Like, technically it was being waived, but this is something that Derrick Rose asked for. This does not hurt the Grizzlies cap-wise at all, I understand. Right. This is something that it is completely, entirely a Rose choice. Do we have any updates on that, where this is going? I speculated yesterday maybe this is him trying to go to a team to finish his career that he thinks he has a better chance to win at if it's not Memphis. I speculated maybe retirement is coming. Is there anything that you have read in the tea leaves or anything that you can share with us in terms of an update?
I'll just keep this one kind of brief just on that part of it. And I'll say this. What I do know about Derrick Rose, and through my reporting over the last year, what most Memphis fans have pretty much can gather is the fact that he loves Memphis. This decision was not made on some, I hate playing here, I don't want to be here type thing from that perspective. It was not because of unhappiness with the Grizzlies organization or anything of the sort. Let's go ahead and, nip that part in the bud. Derrick Rose has enjoyed his time in Memphis to the point where I've said this in the past. When he played with the Chicago Bulls, he didn't buy a house there. When he played with the Minnesota Timberwolves, didn't buy a house in Minnesota. He played with the Detroit Pistons, he didn't buy a house there. When he played with the New York Knicks, he didn't buy a house in New York. When he came to the Memphis Grizzlies, he bought a house for his wife, for his family. His oldest son now plays basketball, goes to school here in Memphis, plays basketball, at the school, and plays, in the summer with, Ja Morant's AAU program. This was the first year of the 12-time program. And PJ Rose, Derrick Rose's son, has been involved since March. And from everything that I've heard, he's enjoying it. And from everything I've heard, like Ja in his whole crew, Devontae Pack, who's the coach on PJ Rose's team, they're enjoying it. And Derrick Rose is heavily involved in that part. He's been on the road to the games in Georgia, South Carolina. And I will say that, so do with that information what you will. But Derrick Rose loves Memphis. It's not something where there was some angst or anything in that case. Everything else, Joe, I mean, I listened yesterday and you pretty much outlined it perfectly. I don't want to keep reiterating everything that was said there, but yeah, you laid it out perfectly. Derrick Rose situation, for lack of better words, this was not something that the Grizzlies were expecting, so to speak. So things have to happen. You mentioned at the top of the show, now they're down to 13 players on the rosters. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show, but you got to go into the season with 14. So now there is going to be another move that has to be made. And that was another thing. There were a couple posts I sent out on X that had people just like going haywire. And I didn't even really mean much by it. Like, I guess, I guess is this the chance for me to explain what those posts really meant?
No, you got to build the legend.
Okay, whatever.
Adrian Wojnarowski is leaving a pretty big seat to fill. This could you could be the guy that leads and makes so much out of nothing. This is your window.
Woj, man. Shout out to Woj.
I'm curious as to your take again, and I want to stress I respect Damichael a good bit. Like, it's all in good-hearted fun.
Yeah, for sure.
I appreciate your compliments about the show yesterday. I hope I did you justice because you come from a generation of people in Memphis that grew up watching Derrick Rose, right? Yeah. And the impact that he had on that city. A couple of commenters on YouTube are saying, "Oh yeah, he had such an impact, breaking the rules and those sorts of things." That's neither here nor there in terms of what he did on the basketball court. And if you're listening to this podcast,
don't get me started on that.
Well, yeah. We need a whole nother episode, I'd imagine.
No, please.
But my point is, Memphis is a basketball town, and you could pretty easily argue Derrick Rose is the one of, if not the best Memphis Tigers to ever wear that uniform. And certainly the best, or one of, if not the best, NBA players to have worn that uniform. So for him to come back to Memphis, whether this is the end or there's something else coming, to be a part of that as a Grizzly, that had to be special for you, and it was special for a lot of people. And as much as my experience was different because I didn't have that, I can respect that meant a lot to you and others in the city to have that kind of full circle moment.
For sure. And I'll with the college season, I won't have to get too much into it, but I'll just say this. Any University of Memphis Tiger fan out there can agree that the 2008 basketball season was one of the most fun times of their life. You watch one of the most dominant seasons in Tigers basketball history. Enjoy it. Like, whatever happened after the fact, boo-hoo. Like, you can't erase the memory and how good everything felt until Mario Chalmers, hit that shot and everything that happened after that. But with all that being said, man, it was full circle, like you said. And despite what Joe Mullinax tries to get everyone to believe on here, Derrick Rose was not my favorite basketball player at any point in my life. But
I don't know.
He was very fun to watch, though, and he was the kids' favorite player, right? He was the guy, the quick. He was like Ja to the kids now, like John Anthony Edwards, the explosive point guard, could do all the flashy highlight stuff. I loved watching that part of Derrick Rose. It wasn't just that he was my favorite. It's just he was so exciting. He was thrilling. And on top of all that, he played for Memphis. And for him to come back here, the only part of it is, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. I wanted to see him kind of go through some successful periods with this team. I wanted to see him, be a part of, a playoff run with the Grizzlies or something like that and whatnot. But we won't get to see that. But at the end of the day, Derrick Rose got to play here, and now, he's got a house here. Like, this is going to be a special place for him. I don't think it'll be the last time we see Derrick Rose at FedEx Forum or anything. Like, he'll be around in some way, shape, or form, and all that good stuff. But yeah, I think that's kind of where I am on it. I wasn't, it's not the end of the world. I mean, that he's leaving Memphis, leaving the Grizzlies, simply because of the fact that, how I feel about Scottie Pippen Jr., and most people do, and I don't think there's a big gap between what Scottie Pippen Jr. can do right now and what Derrick Rose did last season. So I don't think you're losing too much from that standpoint, but there are so many intangible things that you're probably going to have to replace with another roster spot, right, Joe?
With another roster spot. So just for the sake of clarity, before we move on, there is no truth to the rumor that I may or may not have started that you have a poster in your bedroom right now of Derrick Rose. There's no truth to that.
There is no truth to that. There's no NBA poster in my room. Yeah.
You can clear the record.
Clear the record.
You heard it here first. Damichael Cole, not Derrick Rose's biggest fan. Oh man,
it took him leaving the Grizzlies for us to get that out the way.
There you go. Well, that's part of the bit, right? Now we just have to find new bits here on Locked On Grizzlies. Thankfully for you, and thankfully everyone out there, Damichael is the one who is the expert reporter, and I'm the one that is good at finding the bits. So we'll have a trial about somebody else here down the road here on Locked On Grizzlies. Don't you worry, we'll find something. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, I love the NFL right now because Jaden Daniels plays for my football team, the Washington Commanders. And boy, you want to see a Bengal get fricasseed on national television, this is your guy right here. Very excited about Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders and what they've done so far. I'm excited about FanDuel too. And you can be excited just like me and start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, like I might have gotten a hunch that Jaden Daniels is going to lead a come-from-behind victory or a big-time win when they were the underdog, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is all and more what you can do over at FanDuel.com. Go check them out. So, Damichael, we've been talking about the reality that is this team needing to add a guy, right? Yeah. We briefly mentioned it earlier in the show. That's true. By the end of training camp, it's true on both ends. And what a weird world that we live in, right? A couple of months ago, before the Zaire Williams trade and all those sorts of things, we were like, how are they going to get this roster cut down? They've got too many dudes right now. Now they don't have enough. They have 13 guys on the active roster. They have to have 14 by the end of training camp, so it's not something they have to rush into. Right. But you've made the point here on the show and on social media in your writings over the Commercial Appeal. They're going to training camp soon. And usually you want to have a full roster of guys to have a full training camp. It feels like some shoe has to drop at some point, and by league rules, it has to by the end of the preseason. How do you see early on in this process Memphis doing this? I think on yesterday's show, I said the easiest thing for them to do is just convert Scottie Pippen Jr. and see who gets waived, cut around the league, and sign somebody to a two-way contract and move along. But you continue to very fairly point out that backup point guard is the biggest question on this team going into a pretty important season. is it possible that this move has them pivot in a way that maybe we don't see coming? Could a trade be incoming? Could them bringing in a current free agent be a possibility if they don't think Scottie Pippen Jr. is ready? How do they pivot, assuming that they weren't planning on Derrick Rose being gone at this stage of the offseason into the preseason?
Man, I got a lot to say right here, but I'm gonna sum it up pretty quickly here. So I think if you look at the free agent talent pool right now, and you say, hey, let's go look at the free agents at point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center, I think you will easily come to conclusion that point guard is the deepest free agent position.
100%.
And that just so happens to be the spot where the Grizzlies, I mean, before this, I've said that, another physical center, but that's just nitpicking, right? Just something to add just in case of injuries or whatever, not someone that would need to play. But this backup point guard spot could be potentially for someone to play some real minutes. And there is talent, out there. But before I get to that, I'm gonna give some names in a second here, Joe. But I want to rush up into something else real quick too. And there's this whole thing, like some people have kind of shot back at me saying, backup point guard really being an important, like people are shooting down that. And my rebuttal to that is, okay, backup point guard is not that important to you. Okay, well, show me a season where Ja Morant's played 75 games. Show it to me. If backup point guard is not important to you, okay, you expect Ja Morant to go play 75 games. Show me when that's happened. Or, okay, backup point guard is not important to you. Do you expect Ja to play 35 minutes? Show me when that's happened over a full course of the season. Last season, in 9 games. Okay, cool. But if you take away that season, in the years before, and even deeper into it, the Taylor Jenkins staple, Sharon's not going to be playing 35. Dez is not going to be playing 35. Ja's not going to be playing 35. Backup point guard is more important in Memphis than in a lot of places. Until Ja Morant proves, and I say prove because do we think he can do it? Yeah, but he has to prove 75 games. NBA slate, and at that point, you're asking 7 games of a backup point guard. I'm on board with you. But until then, if we're getting 61 game Ja Morant, 57 game Ja Morant, like we did in those 2 seasons where they won 50-plus games, right, Joe? If we're getting that version of him, guess what? You're wishing up on a star if you're thinking Tyus Jones is sitting out there in free agency right now. You're going to go 32-13 over 2 seasons. In that case, that's where I stand on that, Joe. So backup point guard is important.
There is no Tyus Jones because he's in Phoenix, right? He's going to be the starting point guard for the Suns. Yeah, but there is a name. I don't want. I've got one.
Throw me your name.
I don't want to kill the lead, and you're probably going to disagree with me because you like guys that are more fits, whereas I'm excited about acquiring talent. There's a name out there that's still a free agent that when I looked this up earlier today, it blew my mind because I thought this guy had signed somewhere.
It can't.
Markelle Fultz is still sitting out there in free agency. And I'm not saying he's better than Tyus Jones.
He's the best free agent available.
I'm saying he sure as hell, pardon my language, is better than Derrick Rose. And that dude is sitting there right now. And to Rose's credit, whatever the buyout agreement was, there is no cap hit against the Grizzlies. There's ways that they could finagle the money where maybe it's a luxury tax issue, but we have the Robin Hood patch now, right? We have the cool New Jersey patch. It's going to help for that luxury tax, baby. Yeah. I think that, to me, if they're going to sign someone, if it's not going to be Scottie Pippen Jr., that's still the easiest thing to do. Therefore, I think that's the most likely end result. If they're going to go outside of the organization, I think they'd be insane to not kick the tires on Markelle Fultz.
I like that one. And I'm going to be in the same ilk here, but I'm going to go a little bit different route. I'm going to say Dennis Smith Jr.
That's another one that it's wild.
Those 2 guys, Markelle Fultz, you said, I said 2. Markelle Fultz was my other one. Then if you get one of those, you're still in the same spot to me.
It's a home run. Either one is a home run.
You're fine. Markelle Fultz, I think he's the better playmaker, and he's very good at getting to his spots. Both of them, you don't expect 3-point shooting. Like I think like you were talking about fits, of course, it would be great to have one of these guys be a plus 3-point shooters, but here's where they both excel defensively. And I like that idea because you talk about me. Well, I talk about the idea why I like Scottie Pippen Jr. It's not because of all the fancy offensive stuff. It's because he's going to come in the game, and you need your backup point guard to be that change of pace, not just offensively. Tyus Jones did it on the offensive end. He changed the pace up offense. I like the ones that come in and they pick up 94 feet. And when you see him at that scores table, you let your head down. Oh, this guy's about to come in with all this energy, and you're just trying to coast through, the last 2 minutes left in the quarter, and they're about to come in just going full speed. That's Dennis Smith, and he's going to hound you. He is graded out over the last couple of years, one of the best point guard defenders and one of the best point of attack guys in the association. I looked at his highlights the other day. I mean, this guy's got blocks on Kevin Durant. Not any of that chase down from behind stuff. I'm talking about meeting him at the top. 6'2", 6'3", Dennis Smith. We know about the athleticism. And, he was compared to the guy we were just talking about coming out of college. He has a lot of Derrick Rose comps and the explosiveness and whatnot. Hasn't really panned out that way. But Markelle Fultz, you mentioned it. I mean, the ability to score around it. I think the facilitating stands out there. But he's the long arm kind of wing defender, right? He's the guy, when you think of the stocks, we think of deflection, steals. Markelle Fultz is that guy. Dennis Smith is I'm going to get in your grill and I'm going to make it uncomfortable for you. Like, you're not going to get a comfortable shot against me. Either way, I think that benefits the Grizzlies getting that defense first point guard because you got a lot of offense on that second unit.
I'd prefer Fultz. I think he's a little bit bigger. I think he has a little bit more layer to his game.
Yeah, I think so too.
If they prefer Dennis Smith Jr., I'm not batting an eyelash. I think that is either one of those. Again, no disrespect to lifelong beloved fan Damichael Cole. Derrick Rose no longer being on the team. This is a possible gift. Now, again, you got to make the money make sense, right? It's not like Memphis is rolling in the dough. So there's ways that they can make it work. If either of those guys, it might come down to who's willing to take the veteran minimum.
If you're available at this point, you better not be thinking you're getting big bucks.
That's true. So maybe Memphis can kind of have their pick. But if either one of these guys are available for the vet minimum, I think phone calls need to be made. And maybe they're being made as we speak to either one of these dudes. So are you a Dennis Smith Jr. guy? Are you a Markelle Fultz guy? Are you just excited that either of those options are better than Derrick Rose would have been, like me? Let us know on X. I'm at Joe Mullinax. Damichael is at Damichael C. And, of course, you can hit us up in the comments as well. Make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA after this episode of Locked On Grizzlies concludes. Damichael and I are going to be on Locked On NBA throughout the season because the Grizzlies are going to be good again, and they're going to want to talk to Damichael and I about the fun that John Morant and the crew are having. But they do an amazing job having a small, homegrown feel with a national podcast covering the ins and outs across the National Basketball Association. Make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA when Locked On Grizzlies has concluded. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Gametime. Damichael loves experiences. I love experiences. I'm a huge fan of Tony Allen and his experience in Memphis. It sticks with me to this day. It's one of the reasons I still do this podcast. So I believe it's in March, right, Damichael? That the Tony Allen game, he'll have his number retired. We're going to talk more about that here in a moment. I might have to get me some tickets for that. I could go the media route, I could probably be a press pass kind of guy in March. But you know what? I might want to be a fan on that night and then go hit up Beale Street with my good buddy Damichael Cole afterwards. I might have to use Gametime when I make such a trip. Gametime does an amazing job to help you make memories at all sorts of events, not just sporting, but theater, comedy, and so much more. They do an amazing job with their seat views. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. They have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. And their ticket coverage is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime, whether it's to Tony Allen's number retirement or opening night and everything in between for the Grizzlies. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off for your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. You better believe it. All right, Damichael, I've been looking forward to this. All right.
Yep.
I'm gonna
Your
stretch
time
out
to
a little
shine.
bit here. I'm gonna shake out. I'm gonna be fast. Because people don't want to listen to me yell for too long. So guess got a crick in my neck. All right. The Grizzlies announced yesterday that Tony Allen is going to have his jersey number retired. Now, I want to stress, right, and this is Locked On Grizzlies, so no disrespect to our national audience if you're checking in, just want to, you heard about Derrick Rose, whatever the case might be. If you're listening to or watching Locked On Grizzlies, chances are you're a Grizzlies fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you probably know who Tony Allen is and how important he is to the grit and grind era. The existence of the phrase grit and grind is literally because of Tony Allen. All hard grit and grind, the famous almost pro wrestling promo that he gave after a win over the Oklahoma City Thunder. I believe it was back in 2010 or 2011 when it all started here. Okay. People online that have no idea what they're talking about are having opinions because that's 2024, Damichael. That is 2024. People probably think that about me. Oh, look, another fat bearded white guy with a podcast. How surprising in 2024. I've been covering this team for over a decade. All right. Yep. And I would be willing to bet until I stopped writing a year or so ago, maybe Chris Harrington of the Daily Memphian has written more words about the Memphis Grizzlies than me over the last decade. I would put that on 100 in front of anybody that's covered this team over the last 11 years. So I have followed the career of Tony Allen with the Memphis Grizzlies. I understand the significance of that gentleman to that group of the core four and that run of Grizzlies basketball. Do his numbers back up a jersey retirement? Maybe not. But you know what the Memphis Grizzlies aren't? The freaking Boston Celtics. They're not the Los Angeles Lakers. They don't have this 20 championship litany of Hall of Famers that make up their Ring of Honor. The Grizzlies have the core four and maybe Pau Gasol. That is what the Grizzlies have, okay? And Pau Gasol is already in the Ring of Honor of another freaking team that I just mentioned. So how about everybody just chills the heck out, because I used my HE double hockey stick for the episode. Yep. How about everybody just takes a deep breath and lets Memphis have Tony Allen have his number retired? Because if you were there, if you watched it, if you experienced it, if you, dare I say, felt it, you know exactly why Tony Allen is having his number retired, and nothing else needs to be said. You will be sitting there among 18,000 of your closest friends in March, and maybe Joe Mullinax paying honor and privilege to the way that Tony Allen played the game of basketball for the Memphis Grizzlies. Could he score the basketball consistently? Absolutely not. Could he kick Chris Paul in the face? You betcha. And he was phenomenal at being Tony Allen, which is exactly what the Memphis Grizzlies needed him to be. And
he set the tempo, Joe. He set the tempo.
The tone.
This franchise, you could make an argument. The Grizzlies didn't really have an identity before Tony Allen.
100%.
Tony Allen played 7 years with the Memphis Grizzlies. Well, know how many times they made the playoffs in those 7 years? Each one of them. Tony Allen doesn't know what it feels like to play for the Grizzlies and not make the playoffs. Never happened.
Never happened.
And here's my thing, and it's more of a general thing because you said everything about the field, right? The culture. Like, this guy is the imprint of what we've become to understand what Grizzlies basketball is. I'm going to go in a different direction because you covered all the good stuff. You got all the good stuff. I'll get the nitty-gritty stuff right here. Defensive players in the game of basketball don't get enough love, specifically perimeter guys. And I've stood on that mountain for as long as I recall. That's why when Marcus Smart won Defensive Player of the Year a couple years ago, it's like about time. It's why I've lost. I cannot fathom why Jrue Holiday has not won Defensive Player of the Year at this point. Jrue Holiday routinely guards Damian Lillard. Then the next day he'll guard Kevin Durant. And then the next day he's guarding, Devin Booker. And then the next day, he's guarding another quick point guard like Trae Young or whatever the case may be. Like, those guys, to me, their jobs are harder than, with all due respect to Rudy Gobert, but 3 of those Defensive Player of the Years were, hey, we're playing drop coverage. Rudy, protect the paint. When Brook Lopez was a finalist running against Jaren Jackson Jr., it was, hey, drop coverage. You put him on the perimeter, he's getting cooked. But, hey, he's still a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Tony Allen wasn't getting cooked. You had to. The only way you were scoring on Tony Allen if you said good defense, better up. That was the only way. I mean, those Kobe matchups. I mean, we don't want to talk about the Klay Thompson ones. I mean, coming from someone who's often referred to as a light-skinned brother, like he might have put us out of style. They've been saying light-skinned guys out of style for a while, but Tony Allen, especially in Memphis, I think he put us out of style with the way that he did Klay Thompson that series. But I digress because usually Joe gets the I digress. I get it for this episode.
There you go. I like it.
The way that he played on the defensive end, to me, is the equivalent of what we saw from Zebo offensively. It balanced out. You needed him to guard Kobe. You needed him in that second round or first round playoff series. Second round, I think it was against the Thunder. It was second round. You needed him in that second round playoff series against the Thunder to guard Kevin Durant. Just like you needed Zebo to lead the team in scoring, throughout some of those runs. So, I mean, he deserves it. And I'm a sucker for the guys who do the dirty work that need the attention. That's why if you've seen me, covering the Grizzlies, I'm always trying to talk about, Steven Adams screen setting, right? Because it matters. Just like, the Desmond Bane 3-pointers and things like that, because Desmond Bane's open because of that screen he just set. And it's the same thing with a guy like Tony Allen. Whoever it was, he was guarding those top perimeter options. He set the tone defensively, and he did his thing, man. Mr. First Team All Defense, well deserved. Can't wait. March 15th against the Thunder, and very fitting because of what you said earlier as well. That's kind of where the grit and grind, all heart grit and grind moniker came from.
I just looked it up, partner. I think I might be doing this. I think I'm a tentative yes to flying in on March 15th.
We're going to have Joe Mullinax in the building, baby.
I think we're going to have to record some in-person Locked On Grizzlies episodes. I think we're going to have to enjoy ourselves on Beale Street and raise a glass to one Tony Allen. That's how annoyed I am with these people that just don't understand it all. You know what? I understand. I lived it. I was there, baby. And I'm going to be there again tentatively on March 15th. All of you can join us, and you can buy Damichael and I drinks and all sorts of things because you love Locked On Grizzlies so much. Not real drinks, of course. Soda pop is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, my mom's listening, Joe.
Yeah, I understand. I apologize, Mama Cole. I'm sorry. Thank you guys so much for being with us on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Before it completely goes off the rails, make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA before you go about your business on this day, on this Wednesday. It's a great show. Make sure you're checking it out. Hopefully we don't get any calls from our boss who co-hosts that show about the advertising we were doing for all the fine establishments down on Beale Street. Damichael, we can maybe do a little bit more of a deep dive. Maybe there's some trade options for this point guard. There's lots of different ways they can approach this. And again, the easiest way we talked a little bit about today, the idea of just Scottie Pippen. Is he ready for this moment? Is he ready to be that guy? Maybe we can have a little conversation about that tomorrow.
Definitely. We need to get more into these options because now one thing that is more realistic, and me and you talked about it, was now Marcus Smart might be playing on the ball a little bit more. Maybe that's worth talking about because there is a case. Some people will say, oh, he didn't get enough time to learn the guys' games and things like that. But we can save that conversation. Maybe that's worth talking about.
What about when he was in Boston and he knew those guys?
I know.
Still really was not great at that position. But yeah, we can talk more about it on tomorrow's episode. Looking forward to it as always. Make sure you're checking us out on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get podcasts. We will be there each and every time an episode drops as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Again, make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing, all those fun things. Make sure you come back with us tomorrow. We have fun here at Locked On Grizzlies. Hopefully you had a good time with us today, and you'll be back again tomorrow. For Damichael, I'm Joe. Stay locked in. Again, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, everywhere you get a podcast, you can get Locked On Grizzlies. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you next time here on Locked On Grizzlies.